Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. Our God, you reign forever. Our hope, our strong deliverer. You are the everlasting God, the everlasting God. You do not faint, you won't grow weary. You're the defender of the weak. You comfort us in need. You lift us up on wings like eagles. Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. Our God, you reign forever. Our hope, our strong deliverer. You are the everlasting God, the everlasting God. You do not faint, you won't grow weary. You're the defender of the weak. You comfort those in need. You lift us up on wings like eagles. You are the everlasting God, the everlasting God. You do not faint, you won't grow weary. You're the defender of the weak. You comfort those in need. You lift us up on wings like eagles. Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. We're gonna go to number 16. Be the strength of my life.
You're making excuses now?
Every day I look to you to be the strength of my life. You're the hope I hold on to. Be the strength of my life. Every day I look to you to be the strength of my life. You're the hope I hold on to. Be the strength of my life. number 45. Eye of the Storm. In the eye of the storm, you remain in control. In the middle of the war, you guard my soul. You alone are the anchor when my sails are torn. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm. In the eye of the storm, you remain in control. In the middle of the war, you guard my soul. You alone are the anchor when my sails are torn. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm. When the solid ground is falling out from underneath my feet, between the black skies and my red eyes, I can barely see. When I realize I've been let down by my friends and my family, I can feel the rain reminding me. In the eye of the storm, you remain in control. In the middle of the war, you guard my soul. You alone are the anchor when my sails are torn. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm. When my hopes and dreams are far from me and I'm running out of faith, I see the future I pictured slowly fade away. And when the tears of pain and heartache are pouring down my face, I find my peace in Yeshua's name. In the eye of the storm, you remain in control. In the middle of the war, you guard my soul. You alone are the anchor when my sails are torn. Your love surrounds me in the eye of the storm. When they let me go and I just don't know how I'm gonna make ends meet, I do my best now, I'm scared to death we might lose everything. And when the sickness takes a child away and there's nothing I can do, my only hope is to trust in you. In the eye of the storm, you remain in control. In the middle of the war, you guard my soul.
he died
Did
a
she?
lot. Yeah. Yeah. His mom used a song a lot to get through that time.
Yeah.
She would listen to it over and over again. She was here for a memorial.
Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness stretches to the sky. Your righteousness, it's like a mighty mountain. Oh, your justice flows like the ocean's tide. Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness stretches to the sky. Your righteousness, it's like a mighty mountains, and your justice flows like the ocean's tide. And I will lift my voice to worship you, my King. I will find my strength in the shadow of your wings. I will lift my voice to worship you, my King. I will find my strength in the shadow of your wings. Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness stretches to the sky. Your righteousness, it's like the mighty mountains, and your justice flows like the ocean's tide. And I will lift my voice to worship you, my King. I will find my strength in the shadow of your wings. I will lift my voice to worship you, my King. I will find my strength in the shadow of your wings. Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness stretches to the sky. Your righteousness, it's like the mighty mountains, and your justice flows like the ocean's tide. Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heavens. Your faithfulness stretches to the sky. We're gonna go to number 28. I know you're kind of gonna go, what? But you'll understand after the teaching. Each of these songs references something with this month. Each of these songs has something to do with what this month teaches us and what this month is. Victory in Jesus.
Those are picking up mass green from your dress.
Yes.
It is so, I've never seen of that green. It's just, wow. Isn't that pretty?
Yes.
I was watching her while she was dancing, and it was just like shiny green everywhere. It was
All right.
awesome.
That's because
Okay.
they were laying with the green ones.
That was awesome. You didn't even need a green
What
one,
is
that
the
one.
name of that cloth again? The snap to
Kite.
kite. Okay.
It's ripstop.
Good day.
Okay.
Ripstop.
Number
Not
28.
ripstop.
Okay, let's stop.
I heard an old story, how a Savior came for me, how he gave his life on Calvary to save a wretch like me. I heard about his groaning, of his precious blood's atoning. Then I repented of my sins and won the victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and he bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me and I knew him, and all my love is to him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. I heard about his healing, of his mercy power revealing, how he made the lame to walk again, and caused the blind to see. And then I cried, "Dear Jesus, come and heal my broken spirit."
Yes.
And sometimes Jesus came and brought to me the victory. Oh, victory, Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and he bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me and I knew him, and all my love
Yeah.
Sounds like a camp song type thing.
Huh?
Sounds like a camp song type
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, kind of. Old Pentecostal, which is really funny because, I mean, it's not funny that it's an old Pentecostal song. It's great that it's an old Pentecostal song. But I was reminded of it by a Lutheran pastor. Very formal liturgy stuff, and he brought that out a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh, that's such a perfect song. Such a perfect song for this season. I've got some verses, so if you don't have a Bible, you're going to want one.
Bible. I thought I did.
Pick a verse and pass it down, right?
Bible.
Gotta find one.
It will distract you from the preacher's
Huh?
sermon.
While you were singing that song, my shoulders hurt almost all the time. They hurt the most when I'm trying to sleep. There's something very wrong with my shoulders. And as you were singing that simple little song, I was running around, all my shoulder pain left.
Yay.
That's victory.
Just wanted to tell you that.
Yay.
One day on the pass anytime he wants to make it.
Is it okay to
permanent,
take
I'll be
this
so
out?
happy.
Yeah,
I'll put it back.
yeah, it's okay to use that one.
Any more?
Greg has a
I'll do
couple.
another one, judges.
We got one more here, so we doesn't have one.
I think we all have
I
one.
think we did.
And if you can't read it, just ask. I might be able to tell you what it says. And a couple of them I had to change because when I went back and looked at them, I went, wait a minute. No, not all that. I don't want to do all that. Father, thank you for who you are and for what you've done and for your provision for us. And I thank you for this day and for this evening. I thank you that you are a good God and that you have ordered the days and the times, and you have placed us in this year, in this time, in this season for your glory. In the name of Yeshua. Amen. Welcome to the month of Adar.
When does it start?
Last night,
Oh.
I believe. Yeah, I think it was last night. And actually, even those that observe the moon, the new moon has been seen in Jerusalem. So we are now officially in the month of Adar, whether you're going by the Hebrew calendar, the standard one, or whether you're going by the observance of the new moon in Jerusalem. This is the 12th or 13th month, depending on the year, in the liturgical calendar, counting from the month of Nisan, the month of Aviv, the next month that's coming actually. Or it's the 6th month, which is halfway through the year if we count from Tishri. We count it from Tishri, from Rosh Hashanah, which is the legal year. In leap years, as we've talked about last time, there are 2 months of Adar. So the month of Adar in all years is called a pregnant year. It's a pregnant month. It births an extra one every once in a while, like 7 times in a 19-year cycle. But what that does is it keeps the lunar calendar in sync with the proper seasons. The month of Nisan cannot start until the barley is aviv, or ripe. Adar sets the stage for that. Adar sets the stage for that. So they watch. And if the barley's not coming up, if the almond has not blossomed, it is not time for the Adar main yet. So they will do a second Adar before it. They insert an extra month. And that's what we celebrated last month, where we celebrated and we talked about the tribe of Levi and how Levi had no normal place, but God placed him there. And so the month of Adar, there's no normal place for that extra month except God placed it there. Okay, but this is the regular Adar. It is the main one. I want us to understand that because it is a pregnant month, it's supposed to be a promise of birth, a promise of joy to come. It's written, as soon as Adar begins, increase your joy. As soon as Adar begins, increase your joy. And it's a commandment. It's an order. It's not something that says you're going to start being happy in this month. It says you are to increase your joy. We are to choose joy. We are to choose to be joyful. This month we celebrate what is considered the most joyous of festivals. Well, in terms of party fun anyway. The Festival of Purim, which is always the month preceding Passover. So just like the month of Elul, when we do the month of Elul in the summer leading up to Rosh Hashanah, we spend the whole month in preparation for Rosh Hashanah. The month of Adar is a preparation for Passover. The month of Adar is a preparation for Passover. If you're going to clean out your house, you might get started now, because if you wait until the week before Passover, finding all the leaven in your house is not going to be easy. So most begin their spring cleaning now. It's a good time to get stuff out of the way. Who has Esther 9, verses 20 through 22, and then 27 through 28? The book of Esther.
I got it.
Okay.
Then Mordecai recorded these events, and he sent letters to all the Jews who were within all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, obliging them to celebrate the 14th day of the month of Adar and the 15th day of the same month annually. Because on those days the Jews rid themselves of their enemies, and it was a month which was turned for them from sorrow into gladness, and from mourning into a holiday, that they should make them days of feasting and rejoicing, and sending portions of food to one another and gifts to the poor.
So this is the instruction for how to celebrate this festival of Purim. Okay. To celebrate with joy, feasting, celebrate, send presents of food to each other, and give gifts to the poor. Go on with the next, Craig.
We get to celebrate with you.
The Jews established and made a custom for themselves and for their descendants and for all those who allied themselves with them, so that they should not fail to celebrate these 2 days according to the regulation and according to the appointed time annually. So these days were to be remembered and celebrated. Throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city, and these days of Purim were not to fail from among the Jews, or their memory fade from their descendants.
So it's supposed to be a happy time. It's supposed to be celebration. It is supposed to be every time. It is supposed to be continued. I've actually, and I don't know, Joy's been around the Messianic movement a while. She's probably heard this too. We've had people that have come in here and gone, "What, you're doing Hanukkah and Purim? Those aren't biblical festivals."
Oh, yes, they are.
Oh, really?
Yes, they are.
Is Esther in the Bible? If Esther is in the Bible, then Esther is a biblical festival, because it is commanded here in the book of Esther, which is a part of our Bible. So you could argue Hanukkah away if you wanted to. I don't care.
No.
But you can't argue this one from the Tanach. Now, I understand it is not one of the 7 primary festivals, but it is still a biblical festival. It's mentioned here. It's commanded here. Even prescribed how they're supposed to do it, that they're supposed to make it joyful. Because in this month, that which the enemy meant to be your destruction became your building up. What was supposed to be your death became a resurrection of the Jewish people. What was supposed to be sadness was joy. It became a time of victory. This year, Purim is celebrated on Wednesday, March 20th, which is coming up a week from this Wednesday. It's not this Wednesday, but the next one, okay? And we will gather, we will celebrate. I don't know exactly all we're going to do yet, but we'll figure it out, right?
Uh-huh.
She's got a vision for it a little bit, and I've got a little bit of a vision for it, and we'll get our heads together and we will have it, okay? We will celebrate with joyfulness. because God has given us victory. God has given us joy. And yes, there is a season leading up to it where there is usually a fasting period. And there's nothing wrong with fasting. And in fact, we need to begin to implore the Lord for that which we need victory in today. Do we want our victory to be only the stuff that he's given us victory in the past, or do we want future victory? We may want to think about that. Adar, the word Adar, the name of the month, is related to the Hebrew word that is used for strength. Strong arm of God. The strength. Adar. So this is a month that we see the strength of God. That word Adar can also be translated exalted, praised, power, mighty. These are all aspects of the character of God, are they not? And so this is a really good month to look for those aspects of God in what happens with our lives and what happens around us. We are looking for God's strength. We are looking for him to be exalted. We are looking to praise him. We're looking for his power. We're looking for his might. I want you to think about this. The time of Esther was a time where the people were discouraged. Okay? They were discouraged. They were in captivity, and they knew they had earned that captivity. Okay? The prophets had made it very, very clear. If you disobey, you will be taken away. And they disobeyed. So that by the time we're talking about being here in Babylon and being with all of this stuff that she is dealing with, they have figured it out. Most of them are now walking in obedience to God as best they can. In fact, that's part of what Haman uses against them. They don't follow your laws, king. They're following the laws of their God instead. Now, had they not been doing that, he couldn't have used that against them, right? But he did. They were discouraged in a sense. They were in captivity. They knew they had earned it. But even in this season of punishment, God didn't abandon them. He didn't forget them. He didn't leave them there to wallow in their pain and misery. He saw what was coming. He had a plan. Even when we deserve, or we think we deserve, the situation we find ourselves in. And honestly, there's a truth to that sometimes. Sometimes bad things happen because we did something stupid. Right?
You've been there.
You know,
Been
really,
there.
really, you know, we sometimes want to just say bad things happen to good people, but the reality is sometimes things happen because we made bad choices. And then we're stuck in our bad choices, and these bad things are happening. And what I want us to remember is that even in that, God has not abandoned us. He has not. And he will not. He hasn't forsaken us. He hasn't forgotten us. Even when we don't think we see his hand moving, when we don't see what he's doing, God's at work behind the scenes. He's preparing for our protection, but not just our protection, our prosperity. See, that's a part of the story that people don't think about. The enemy looks at our situation and our hard times as an opportunity to destroy us. You know, hey, we're in the gutter. Hey, let me push you down farther, right? You're on your face. Let me step on it. That's kind of the way the enemy acts with us. But God says, no, that's not going to happen. Haman planned for the death of the Jewish people, and he planned to steal from them whatever they had. And they didn't have all that much right then. They really didn't. But God, he was at work. And in the deliverance, in their being given the right to defend themselves, and they're stepping up doing what God said, taking their part. They didn't sit back and say, oh, God, strike them down with something. They got out their swords, they got out their knives, they got out their weapons, and they fought back. And when they fought back, they plundered their enemy. They plundered the enemy. Those who went against them thinking they'd steal their money, guess who got the money? Guess who got the goods? Guess who got and gained wealth? And it was the Jewish people. Not only that, but they gained converts. They gained people who saw what God did and said, I want your God, and joined with them. So that in the celebration of Purim, it is commanded, not only are the Jews to celebrate it, but anyone who wants to celebrate with them is to celebrate with them. Because God used this opportunity that was meant to wipe them out, to increase them. To increase. I was reading something this last week, and what God said, it kind of perked my thought. It was like, what, really? You know, there were 6 million plus killed in the ovens in Germany, right? 6 million plus Jewish people died. The Jewish people wasn't that big of a group anyway. You know, there's, in the years since the ending of World War II, in the years since the beginning of the nation of Israel to today, the nation of Israel has more than doubled or tripled in size from what they were before the ovens. And they lost 6 million. What the enemy meant to wipe them out, God put them back in their land. He used it to his glory, to their honor. And God has been blessing them. God is at work. Our deliverance is being prepared even when we don't see it. Just like Passover next month is going to show us the deliverance through miraculous events, because there were lots of miracles connected to Passover. Lots of things that were totally against the laws of nature, all connected to Passover. Purim doesn't show us those types of miracles. The story of Esther doesn't show us all those types of miracles. What it shows us is deliverance through hidden miracles, through everyday life and righteous choices of God's heroic people. They made the right choices in the right way, and God used them. And so in the hidden miracles, in the everyday business of life, being upright and doing it the way God said, God provided joy. Adar is the month that Moses was born. The great deliverer, right? The greatest deliverer the people knew until Yeshua. Moses. Adar is also the month that Moses died. And you see, this is where Haman kind of made his mistake, because when he cast the lots and it came upon this particular date, he was ecstatic because he figured, hey, they're going to be mourning the loss of Moses because Moses died. He didn't know Jews very well, because you see, they don't mourn the loss. They celebrate the life when there's a death involved. At the annual remembering of someone who's died, they're celebrating their life. And so they celebrate Moses' life. You see, the same day he died is the same day he was born. It's one of those places where in traditional Judaism, great prophets are born, and great prophets will die on the day of their birth or on the day of their conception. That's considered part of the sign of a great prophet, because that's what Moses did. When he died, the leadership of Israel was transferred to Joshua, and that prepared the people to go into the promised land, right? So the month of Adar is a month where we're going to be prepared for the great deliverance that will take us eventually into the promised land. The tribe that's recognized this month is the tribe of Naphtali. She's already got it up there. Adar, increasing joy, right? It says right there, increasing joy. I mean, I don't know if you can read it on the wall or not, but part of the way it's set up, you got to go up there to read it because some of those words are just too small anyway. It is the tribe of Naphtali. One way of reading his name puts it, it's two words that got put together, and it basically says sweetness to me. Sweetness. Kind of like this chocolate cake. Sweetness for me. Huh? Naphtali's chocolate? Well,
It was black.
well, let's not go there right now. But that's not the original meaning of the name Naphtali. Okay? That's a combination thing. Who has Genesis 31 through 8? This is going to tell the story of his birth. Genesis 31 through 8.
When Rachel saw that she bore no children for Jacob, Rachel was jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me sons. If there are none, I'll die." But Jacob became furious with Rachel and said, "Am I, instead of God, the one who withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" So she said, "Here's my maidservant Bilhah. Go to her and let her give birth on my knees, so that from her I may also build a family." Then she gave her maidservant to him for a wife, and Jacob went to her. Bilhah became pregnant and gave birth to a son for Jacob. So Rachel said, "God has judged my cause and also heard my voice and given me a son." Therefore she named him Dan. Then Rachel's female servant became pregnant again and gave birth to a second son for Jacob. So Jacob said, "I've surely wrestled greatly with my sister. Also I've won." So she named him Naphtali.
Okay, so there's this match going on between Rachel and Leah. And Leah's had these children. And Rachel's just not having babies. Not. When Bilhah had a second son on her knees, this was a form of surrogate parenting, okay? So we have surrogate parents, surrogate mothers now. It's the same concept here. This is a surrogate parenting for Rachel. Rachel is the one who names these children. Did you notice that? Bilhah does not. So Bilhah is not raised to the same level as Rachel in terms of these babies that she's having. They are to be Rachel's children. I'm not sure it really worked out that way, but that's okay. It's the way it was intended. She really, it's with a mighty wrestling. First she said, "God judged me and I have a son," and his name was Dan, that as judge. And then she said, "I've wrestled greatly with my sister, now I've won. I had 2 sons. I won." She named him Naphtali. It means wrestled for. Wrestled for. Obtained by fighting or wrestling. Hand-to-hand combat. Obtained through hand-to-hand combat. Yeah.
What are you thinking? Nothing.
So Naphtali is Jacob's 6th son, Bilhah's 2nd, okay? And as Rachel felt she'd really won something with his birth, she felt there was a battle to win and that she won it. The next interesting thing to me is that there is absolutely no record of anything Naphtali did or didn't do. This is the only record we have of him. He was born. He was born. He's not named necessarily specifically with the brothers when Joseph was sold. He was there, but he's not named as one of the instigators or anything. He's not talked about. The next time his name is mentioned is when Jacob is giving the blessings as he's getting ready to die. So Naphtali kind of faded into the background.
He was hidden.
He was hidden. He was camouflaged quite well. We didn't see him. We don't see him. Genesis 49:21. What does Jacob say?
Naphtali is a doe let loose He gives beautiful words.
49:21. Good. Naphtali is a doe, let loose, gives beautiful words. This one says Naphtali is a doe let loose who offers words of beauty. See, the translations on this are very different depending on which translation you read. The New American Standard Version says Naphtali is a hind let loose, and he gives beautiful words. Hind versus a doe. Okay? Giving beautiful words.
I wonder if that is the religion of a family when you have a large family to 6 children. Or there's always one that is so shy and that just not complain.
Maybe. I don't know. But this is our picture of Naphtali. The deer, the doe or the hind. Now, one translation says Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. I think that's the King James. Could be wrong, but it's one of the early translations. So it's a doe that bears fawns, a hind that gives words, positive words, a doe that offers words of beauty. What we know is he's likened to a deer, and that there's beautiful things that come forth. Whether it's words, whether it's babies, or whether it's just beautiful things.
You heard of that book by Hannah Hernard called Hind's Feet on High Places?
Oh, yeah.
I bought 2 of them from that sale.
Did you?
2 copies of it. I should bring some quotes one of these.
Hind's Feet on High Places. I remember doing a Bible study on that, and I remember that was one of my first introductions to doing a Bible study that wasn't actually the Bible. That was very different for me. I was like, what? But it was a good study. It was a very good study. The idea that God takes us and he puts us in the right places and all of that. But this is Naphtali. And this is kind of echoed in the blessing that Moses gives. Who has Deuteronomy 33:23?
And Naphtali, and of Naphtali he said, O Naphtali, sated with favor, full of the blessing of the Lord, possess the west and the south.
Possess the what?
West and the south.
West and the south?
Uh-huh.
Huh. I have possesses the sea and the south.
Huh.
The south shore of Galilee is what's considered it.
Was that where the sea was?
Huh?
Was the sea to the west?
I don't know.
Because it was Mediterranean certainly is to the west.
Are you going to turn the heat up a little? Do you remember how to do that? Because I'm getting cold too. Wonder what happened.
Unusual.
Huh? I know.
That's unusual.
Very unusual.
The heat just came on.
Yeah, we'll turn it up a little bit so it
Song,
stays on a little bit more.
Things.
Huh?
It reminded me of that song, Beautiful Things,
Uh-huh.
but I can't remember all the words.
Naphtali is abounding in favor, full of blessing. Now, if you're giving beautiful words, you're giving blessings, right?
Mhm.
Full of blessing. And he's to be given this land, the sea in the south. And in fact, Naphtali is given a very choice and fertile land, productive land, and it's the south shore of Galilee. It's interesting because it's a very fertile land, and they had to fight for it a little bit. They had to learn to fight, and they learned to fight as they were traveling from Egypt. In the encampment, they were set up. They were north of the tabernacle with Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. Okay, so they camped north of the tabernacle. They're above it in a sense.
They were the furthest north.
Uh-huh.
It says they dwelt with Canaan.
Huh?
They dwelt with Canaan. And it's-
Well, this is just in the camping. This is as they traveled.
Right.
This is as they traveled.
Okay.
When they marched, Naphtali is at the rear with Dan and Asher, and Naphtali. So they're the rear guard. They're the northern guard, and they are the rear guard.
Wow.
Being guards, that meant they had to learn to fight. They protected. They were protecting from invaders. They became fierce and mighty in battle. When it was time to enter the land, they knew how to fight for it. And yet, they did not drive out the inhabitants of the land as they were supposed to do. Judges 1:33.
I have it. Naphtali did not drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh or the inhabitants of Beth Anah that lived among the Canaanites, the inhabitants of the land, and the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh and Beth Anah became forced labor for them.
So they made them their servants. Instead of driving them out, which is what they were supposed to do. Now, these were not people that God said to wipe out. But he didn't say drive them out. Instead, they said, oh, hey, look, we have natural servants. We'll just make them our slaves. Yeah. That wasn't a real wise thing to do. Wasn't a real wise thing to do. But then none of the tribes followed through with driving out the inhabitants of the land as they were supposed to. None of them did. We do know that during the times of the judges, Naphtali is mentioned as participating in the defense of Israel. In fact, in Judges chapter 4, verse 6, when Deborah calls Barak, she is calling him from among the sons of Naphtali. Barak, who led the army with Deborah, was of the tribe of Naphtali, a warrior. Now, he did lose credit for the victory to a woman. In those days, that was quite a hard thing. He lost credit because he didn't fully trust the word of the Lord. Now, I don't believe it was that he didn't fully trust the word of the Lord through Deborah. I think he didn't fully trust the word of the Lord to him. Because when Deborah called to him, she said, didn't God tell you to do this? He said, I'm not doing it without you. So there's this place where God had told him. He waited for the judge. Deborah, it's Judges 4:4. Deborah, a woman who was prophetess, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel. She used to sit under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim, and Bnei Israel came to her for judgment. Now she sent and summoned Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh and Naphtali, and said to him, hasn't Adonai, God of Israel, commanded, go, march to Mount Tabor? Hasn't God commanded this? And he says, if you go, I will go. If you won't go, I'm not going. But he did go because she went. And they did win. And in spite of his losing credit, if we go to Hebrews chapter 11, 32 through 34, who has that?
Did you skip Judges 5:18?
I'll get there.
And what more shall I say? For time will fail me if I tell of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, and David and Samuel and the prophets, who by faith conquered kingdoms, performed acts of righteousness, obtained promises, shut the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, from weakness were made strong, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight.
So Barak is listed in the Hall of Faith as a hero of the faith. Even though he didn't go without Deborah, he still is considered a hero. Tribe of Naphtali, a warrior. It says mighty in war, made
Because
armies
it's okay
flee.
if a woman leads.
Yes, it is.
Yes, you can still get glory as a man.
Absolutely.
Sure.
He was still given this. Judges 5:8 now tells us about the others of Naphtali at the same time. As a group, the whole sons of Naphtali, described as very strong in battle. Judges 5:18.
Okay, and it says a whole list of what all the tribes were doing there during the battle, and Naphtali also was on the high places of the field.
I need the whole verse.
Oh, Zebulun was the people who
Right.
despised their lives, even unto death, and Naphtali also on the high places of the field.
They jeopardized their lives. They risked their lives. Both Zebulun and Naphtali put their lives at risk for the commandment of God. They risked their lives. They were willing to give up their lives for God's purposes. In the scriptures, as we look in here, there are very few specific individuals out of the tribe of Naphtali that are honored or recognized, but each one that is named as a warrior or a leader of armies like Barak. Whether Barak and his men, one of David's mighty men, was from the tribe of Naphtali, some of the men that served under Solomon as warriors, and these men were all said to have wisdom, cunning, and strength in battle. And so we see in this month God's wisdom, his cunning, and his strength. I mean, the month name, Adar, meaning strength. We see it in the tribe of Naphtali, and we see it in the celebration of Purim. I mean, Mordecai and Esther showed great wisdom and great cunning in how they handled going to the king, did they not? In fact, it was even one of those things where they'd showed wisdom to keep who she was a secret up until it was necessary.
What tribe is that?
Benjamin. They're of the tribe of Benjamin.
A warring tribe.
Huh?
A warring tribe.
Yeah, they are. But they showed wisdom and cunning. And then the people, when they rose up to fight, displayed great strength. God gave them victory. In the month of Shevat, which precedes the month, is the tribe of Asher. And we saw in that month that there was a happiness that we were to seek. There was a happiness in God. The tribe of Asher is happy. But this month, we're seeking wisdom. He'll give us strategy and cunning and strength. And all of that is turned into joy, which is beyond happiness. It's not just about being happy. It's about joy. Joy is the reward for those like the men of Naphtali, those who are like Esther, willing to risk their lives. The word says they loved not their lives even unto death. Some of us will recognize that. Revelation 12, 10 and 11.
Then I heard a loud voice in heaven proclaiming, Now have come the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our comrades has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. But they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they did not cling to life even in the face of death.
Salvation, power, authority, all from God, and victory, because they were willing to give up their lives. But there's victory even in that. There's victory even in that. That's Hebrews 10, 23 through 25. This is part of how we understand how to have that victory and how to maintain it. Hebrews chapter 10, 23 through 25.
Let us hold on firmly to the hope we profess, because we can trust God to keep his promise. Let us be concerned for one another, to help one another, to show love, and to do good. Let us not give up the habit of meeting together as some are doing. Instead, let us encourage one another with them all the more, since we see that the day of the Lord is coming nearer.
We have to stay encouraging each other. We can't just go on life as normal in a sense. We have to encourage one another. We have to be strong for each other. Before Esther went to the king, she asked for them to fast and pray for her. She needed the community to support her. because she needed God to support her. Sometimes we try to be lone rangers, and it's not good for us. We have to stick together. We have to do what God wants us to do, but we've got to do it together. We encourage each other. And honestly, this is part of, I believe, why God has us looking at the months and the seasons, is so that we'll pay attention to these things, so that we'll recognize His hand, so that we'll see how He moves in time. So we'll see what He has done with His people. So we'll remember the testimonies. You know, it says they overcame Him by the word of their testimony and by the blood of the Lamb. So they go together. When we study and we learn about the righteous ones of old, and we see what God did with them, that's part of their testimony coming into our lives to encourage us. The word of testimony. The word of testimony. This is why we do all of this, so that we remember God's victory, so we are encouraged by His word. Because His word tells us a couple things. One, it's going to get hard. It's warfare. There are Hamans out there wanting to plot our destruction. It was pretty scary for a while there, wasn't it? This was not an assured thing in their minds. They had to trust God. Esther, who was hidden in the palace for the right time, she was camouflaged. I think that's part of what the camouflage here is about. Other than the fact that also it's about war. It's about doing that hand-to-hand combat sometimes when we need to. That's what the prayer is. That's intercessory prayer. Wrestling for the things of God.
Which is hidden behind the scenes a lot of times.
Deer
It
are
is.
like that.
Oh, yeah.
You ever notice sometimes deer can be right there, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, there's 5 deer standing there.
And
I was
you
looking,
don't
and I was
see
looking, and I didn't see him, then boom.
Yeah, there's something about the deer that does that.
Mhm.
And yeah, and we have the deer. They're hiding in plain sight. A lot of times. So are the miracles of God. So is the hand of God. It's hiding in plain sight. If we'll look at it, if we'll follow it, if we'll pay attention. We think we deserve the hard times, even when it looks like everything is against us.
I was thinking when you talked about that, look at what He's done. You can follow that all the way back to Adam and Eve, because He was the one that made the skin for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
He was there loving them even when they fell, and
exactly.
he showed that there was a plan of redemption for them even though they fell, which is what has been passed on through history and built upon by the prophets.
Yeah.
They started though.
So if we'll pay attention, we will see the salvation of God. So here's the deal. Don't despair. God is with us. God is for us. Victory is ours. I wrote down here, the word is this: do not despair. God is with us. Victory is ours. Blow the shofar. Let's declare and seal the promise of God. Victory is ours. Victory is ours. We don't give up. And we celebrate the victories that He's given us. And we will continue to celebrate. Let's get the shofars out.
Lord's right hand has done mighty things for us. Lord's right hand is lifted high.
Lord's right hand has done mighty things for us. The Lord's right hand is on high. The Lord's right hand is on high. Yeah.